like to call this work session of the Warren County Public School Board to order February 16th, 2022. Before we move into our agenda this evening, Dr. Ballinger, can I ask you for some clarification on the teacher access to the second step curriculum we talked about?
Yes, Madam Chair. So teacher access was stopped. There was an email sent from my office on January the 6th. We also, in that email, it also said to stop counselor. So we did stop it at that time because we did not want that to be taught. Counselors were then given access back so that they were able to prepare for the presentations.
Okay, and then during that time when we were on pause, can you also please clarify the role of the guidance departments?
So yes, the guidance department still had to provide some type of services. So they did not use any of the materials that we had stopped. Some guidance counselors had to go ahead and create new lessons that would be able to at least do something to meet those standards with those students. So the guidance department still were trying to provide some type of instruction for the students.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, is there a motion to accept or modify the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as present.
I'd like to modify the agenda, please. I'd like to make a motion to modify the agenda. Something was added to the personnel report addendum at 3:56 this afternoon.
Excuse me. I got a point of order on that. I've got a motion on the floor to accept the agenda. So I don't know what we do on that.
Okay.
You have to have a second.
So there is a motion on the floor to accept the agenda as presented, and then you would need a second for that. So you need to ask if there's a second for
Is there a
that.
second on the motion to accept the consent agenda?
A second.
Any discussion on that?
I would like to discuss that. At 3:56 today, there was a personnel matter added to the agenda that is barely an hour before this presentation, and as we know, we've changed the policies to where anything that's being voted on, the public can comment on, and Mr. Goodwin gave an interview to the Northern Virginia Daily yesterday morning saying that this was being added to the agenda. So why was this withheld for over 24 hours without putting it on the agenda to deny public and parents the access to know that this was going to be added to the agenda, so it would deprive them of their chance to speak?
So Madam Chair, this follows our same procedures that we've had. We've always had our first personnel, and this was approved by the board in agreement that we were able to, one, we put our personnel item on the agenda by Friday, and then any update would be added on Wednesday, the day of the meeting, for any additions that we had between Friday and Wednesday tonight, so that we would be able to either hire, or if there was resignations or any other thing that we needed to address, so that those would be added. And we have been doing that ever since we have updated everything with the board, as far as making sure that we have our documents and all the materials ready for the board to review. The only thing that was left to be added on Wednesday was the personnel addendum.
The personnel addendum was added. This one particular name was all that was added. And when we were discussing having personnel matters not added on Fridays, I was told in a meeting, open meeting, I was assured that the only time a personnel item would be added to the agenda at the last minute would be in extreme circumstances when we needed to hire someone immediately. And I was giving the example of bus drivers, for instance, like if we got a last minute new hire for a bus driver, that they could be added on last minute. Someone who, of this severity, the accusations of this severity, the parents have a right to be able to speak to this matter. And for it to be added over 24 hours.
I'm not sure that this is a personnel discussion that we need to be having in a public meeting right now.
If you would want to move into executive session, that is the proper place to have a conversation. But
well, right now it's procedural. Procedural is what my objection is the procedural. At that, an interview and a statement was released yesterday morning saying that this was going to be voted on and yet this was not added to our agenda until 3:56 this afternoon, and I myself had to find out from the newspaper.
So I think we can't control what the newspaper says.
We can when our staff is giving the interview. Our staff gave the interview yesterday morning. So the courtesy thing to do would be to update our agenda before it is released to the press. And so that way parents who are checking the agenda for this evening would have the courtesy of finding out more than an hour before the meeting starts. 3:56 is when that agenda item was updated. And I emailed the board after reading the paper this afternoon to ask specifically what was being added. Nobody on this board knew that it was being added until I asked that question. If you want transparency and honesty, this will be pulled or we will allow parents to speak on it. If
It's my
not,
understanding, though, from what I'm hearing, that this falls under the clause of hiring and under that umbrella that he was talking about earlier. That's how I understand the situation, that
Yeah,
addendum in addition falls under that clause that the board has set forth previously to give you the opportunity in
Well,
those
we-
instances.
what we have
Good,
been.
and we always wait, and yes, ma'am, you're correct, because we're not gonna add it on Monday, we're not gonna have one on Tuesday, we're not gonna have, we work through any of the additions that are added after Fridays, and then they are put on there. So if you look at those, if you look at that personnel addendum, there are quite a few names on that personnel addendum that have been added since the personnel report was added on Friday.
That whole addendum went on today.
That's not true. I read it before I sent my email. There was one name. There was one name that was added, and the interview was given yesterday morning. It could have been added yesterday morning. I highly object and will not be complicit in the intentional deception of parents. I will not be complicit in that.
Is there any other discussion on this? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented? Mr. Valentine, can you do a roll call?
Yeah, Madam Chair, are we voting on the consent agenda or on just accepting the agenda for tonight's meeting?
I'm sorry, accepting the agenda. Well, yes, that was what I
The
was.
consent agenda.
You're accepting the agenda
As presented.
Okay. I just wasn't sure what I heard. Dr. Funk,
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe, Madam Chair,
Aye.
Mr. Rinaldi,
Aye.
Mrs. Salins.
No, and with strong protest.
Despicable. Okay, motion carries. Next, we're moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I would like to move to remove the employee at mention, that I can't mention, from the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, that motion dies. Asking again, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion?
I again highly object to what this board is about to do to parents and their rights and the policies and the way things are conducted. I highly object to this. This is fraud.
Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, Mr. Valentine, can you please do a roll call?
Yes. Mrs. Salins,
No.
Mr. Rinaldi,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe,
Aye.
Dr. Funk.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on to our work session. First item on the work session is the presentation by architects on Leslie Fox Kaiser Elementary School renovation design, and that's going to be Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Good evening. At our most recent building committee meeting held on February 11th, we offered an update on the LFK HVAC renovation project. Mr. Levacy and I, along with Mr. Steve Munt of Grimm and Parker Architects, as well as Mr. Jim Boyd, is from Grimm and Parker, will provide for the entire board an opportunity for the presentation that was held during our building committee meeting. Leslie Fox Kaiser Elementary School was built in 1976, and there was an addition added in 1988 and 1993. And parking renovation we had a parking renovation project in 2012. The square footage of the building is a little bit over 60,000, and the campus comprises itself upon 10 acres. The current enrollment of K through 5 there is 496 students, and there's a preschool program there of 39 students for a total of 535 students within the building. LFK's open pod classroom design and so forth is pretty symbolic of the 1970s designs. As LFK's HVAC renovation has been on our capital improvements plan, it has been our intent to start the project after the conclusion of the AS Road elementary renovation. We have been able to secure through some federal CARES and ESSER grants, roughly over $8 million. These grants are in response to the pandemic that its purpose is to increase the outside ventilation throughout the building. It allows for a design concept, the funding that we can use for particular parts of this project. It allows for the design concept. It's a HVAC replacement, and also for a roof replacement as it relates to the HVAC implementation. As you get into the HVAC, you could also have some ceiling replacements and some lighting replacements. As approved by the school board in August of 2021, Grimm and Parker was selected as the design architect for the HVAC renovation design. In November 2021, staff began working with Grimm and Parker to determine the design and construction timeline along with some of the basic design elements of the renovation. So at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Steve Munt of Grimm and Parker, and Jim Boyd will also be here to help answer some questions. But I'll bring up Steve now to do a presentation on the schematic design. And there you go.
Thanks. This is a little smaller. It'd be nice if we could view it at full size, but hopefully this will be large enough. I'm going to take this off since I'm up here. But thank you all so much for this opportunity to update you on the progress that we're making on the schematic design. Thanks, Dr. Ballinger and Madam Chair and all of you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I just wanted to take quickly update you. Jim, why don't you just go ahead and advance to the next slide and just talk about the scope of work for what we're doing at Leslie Fox. Total HVAC replacement, as Buck mentioned, replacement of all the electrical systems, including your fire alarm, intercom, PA system, clock, new generator for the building, replacing all the lighting, replacing all the technology infrastructure, creating a secure vestibule. If you're familiar with the school, you know you walk in the front doors and you're in a hallway and you can just walk right into the school. You're not compelled to walk into the main office and check in. So the creation of a secure vestibule at the front of the school, very important for the school. Replacement throughout of all the finishes, ceilings, floorings, new paint, that sort of thing. Within your classroom pods, as was mentioned, this building was designed in the 70s. At that time it was commonplace just to have a wide open pod with no individual classrooms. Some years after that was built, a suggestion of the perimeter of classrooms was made with some demountable removable partitions, and some furniture has been used to suggest perimeters of the classrooms. But the intent here is going to be to build real walls that really separate one classroom from another to create acoustical separation and contribute to the focus in the classroom and what the teachers are trying to accomplish there. So those walls will extend all the way from the slab to the roof deck to get that acoustical separation. There'll be a little bit of reconfiguration of the classrooms that goes along with that. We'll be replacing all of the exterior glazing, all your windows, all your glass doors and that sort of thing. All of the interior doors and hardware and access control, new card reader systems for all your doors, and then we're making a lot of ADA compliance upgrades. Many of your toilet rooms are not currently accessible by current ADA standards, so we'll be making those changes. This is the existing conditions, a little bit small to view. We'll just jump right ahead because I have some larger plans of individual areas, and then this is the overall plan. We'll skip that one too, so we can move more quickly to the enlarged plans. Schematic, the schedule, where we are right now. Here's our school board work session, February 16th. We are working on the schematic design. This is the first phase of design. At this point, we're really just scoping out what all is in the project. The next phase will be design development. That'll be a couple of months, wrapping up in early April, when we will have made all of the design decisions by that point, which will be largely influenced by the cost estimate that we'll be getting in a few days from our professional cost estimator based on the schematic document that we're now creating. After that, we'll move into the development of the construction documents. That'll be a couple to 3 months there. And we anticipate bidding this project sometime in the late summer, early fall. Right now, we're showing the bidding process has taken place in July. We've noted that is to be determined. These dates are proposed. The reason being, right now, the construction climate is seeing unprecedented long lead times because of all the supply chain issues that the whole world is experiencing. So we know we want to give the contractors sufficiently advanced time to start creating what's called the submittals, where they propose to us the products they intend to use and the systems, and we approve them. They need time to get those approved by us before they actually order them. And once they order them, it takes a long time for them to get here. So the project needs to be bid sufficiently in advance of when they first start work. Balanced against that, however, is the longer the time between when they bid the project and when they actually do the project, your labor costs are going up. And so contractors are wary about trying to bid a project too early in advance of when they can actually do the work. So there's a balancing act to be done there. We'll be staying in contact with our construction manager, our cost estimator, who's a construction manager, and also many area contractors that we have relationships with, to talk to them about when they feel like is the optimal time to bid the project, knowing that it'll start in January. And so that is the intent, that the work would actually start in January. It'll be starting in January of 2023 and wrapping up in the summer of 2024 construction. So next slide. This is how we envision the phasing of the work. Because it's not possible to simply vacate the entire school and do all the work and then bring the students back. It's only possible to vacate about 2 pods worth of students at any given time. There are strategies on site with the trailers that are available, teaching class in the gymnasium, teaching class in the cafeteria. There are strategies that the school can use to vacate 2 pods at a time. So the thinking is, start in the pre-care area and where the 3rd grade pod is right now. This green area is the first phase of construction. That's spring of 2023. The orange is the summer of 2023. That has your major mechanical room, and major electrical space. So that's when you get the new electrical equipment, the generator online, that enables you then, as each additional pod gets worked on, the old fire alarm system can get replaced with a new fire alarm system. The old panels get replaced with the new panels. So then the following phase is in blue, that's fall of 2023. Then you move to the red, that's spring of 2024. And then finally, the last phase is here in the center, that's the summer of 2024. And at that point, the project wraps up. This is a little hard to see. We do have some documents here. We'll pass these out at the end. You'll be able to see all this stuff larger, but this essentially represents that on the site, the contractor will need to set up kind of in the front of the school to have their staging and their parking for that first phase. And then over the summer, they will relocate and they'll be in the same area for the rest of the project. They'll have some parking back here at the very back of the site. And for the rest of the project, their staging area will all be in the back. The reason we have to do that is just simply the access points into and out of the school are such that if they set up in one place in the very back, they'd have to be going through the school during the time that school is in operation to get to the area they're working on. We can't have that. So they'll need to set up in front for that very first phase to get access here without interrupting anything that goes on in the rest of the school. Thereafter, they can set up back here and they can get into each individual phase as it moves forward without disrupting anything that's going on in the rest of the school. So This is very small. I apologize. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and hand these out right now. That's probably the best idea. And I'll give you a moment to find the page that we're currently on so that you can see this larger. There you go. There it is.
Miracle.
All right. So happy because this is right when we need it the most. All right. This is your existing layout. Okay. And as you can see, you can come in these front doors and all of a sudden you're in the school. That's the situation that we need to correct. So here's the strategy. We're going to take this area that's already undercover and enclose the front part of it to create an entry vestibule, and then extend a canopy, a small canopy out in front to cover the new front doors. But from this vestibule, you'll have to move into this reception area where you will check in with the administrative staff that are in your main office here. And only then can you proceed through this door. Just hoping I had that laser pointer. Proceed through this door. So the receptionist here, the admin staff, they will have a device by which they can buzz you through from their desk. They can open that door and you can then move into the rest of the school. So the way this is now laid out with the main office right here, we're showing the clinic right here also on the main corridor that students are able to get directly into the clinic from the main corridor, but it's also got a door to the main office. So if your nurse is away, the main office have strong supervision with the door and a window right there of students that might be waiting in the clinic or at these cots. There's a toilet room here for staff use. There's another toilet room for the clinic. That toilet room can also have a shower in it for a student that gets messy if they're sick. And teacher workroom back here in the back, records vault right here. And then across the hall now, currently, in the current layout, the assistant principal and the principal are over here. We're relocating them over here to this space. There'll be a small waiting area right here, and principal and assistant principal offices are right here outside that waiting room. The rest of the layout remains pretty much the same, other than the fact that we're making these rooms accessible by current accessibility standards. The conference room, the kitchenette, these conference, they're all staying the same current layout, but it's really about moving the clinic over here. The BAM suite moves to a different part of the school, but this will be an office that they can use for a few different functions. The most important things are creating that secure vestibule and also the relocation of this teacher workroom, which the next slide shows why we're doing that. Right? This is your existing cafeteria. Here's your existing stage. The work scope in the cafeteria is to remove this stage. That'll increase your cafeteria size. We'll reconfigure some storage areas, make the toilet rooms accessible, renovate the kitchen. We have some things we're doing in the kitchen, including adding additional freezer space, new lighting, HVAC, the same things we're doing throughout the rest of the school. The next slide will show the plan views. So what's happening right now is, currently, you're using that stage as the teacher workroom. Many years ago, a gymnasium was added, and that gymnasium has its own stage. So you already have a performance space, an assembly space elsewhere in the school. So this is no longer needed as a stage, and that's why it's currently being used as a workroom. It's not ideal because the teachers actually have to walk all the way through the cafeteria to get to the workroom. So this is that location of that new office that we were just looking at. By putting the teacher's workroom here, the teachers can get to the workroom without having to move through the cafeteria. And by taking that stage out, we can get some additional windows, we can get some daylight in the cafeteria, and we're creating a large storage room at the front of the cafeteria instead of back here in the back where it is now. And this is where your table and chair storage could be. Your serving line approach will still work the same way it always has, but we are improving the toilet rooms. Again, the toilet room in the kitchen, some locker and storage area there for the kitchen staff. Here's that freezer addition that we're adding to make the existing freezer and cooler are very small. So we're making the entire area of the freezer and cooler just the cooler and adding the freezer here. Okay. So is that the very next slide?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll have another slide that talks about what's happening within the pods, but this slide is talking about a change that we intend to make to the front entrance of each of your pods. If we just go straight to the next slide. So what you have right now is every one of these entrances to your existing pods, and this is, I believe that's first grade, hard to read the sign there, but there's electrical panels. This one only has the one, but there's some of them that have as many as 5 electrical panels lined up. And all those electrical panels are not going to be there in the future layout. They're moving to an electrical room. So we need to do something with this space. And our thinking was, with the 2 entrances into each pod and this large area of blank wall, do something with that wall in the way of display. We just got some rectangular, dashed lines in here, but what that represents is whiteboards, chalkboards, display cases, identifying signage, things that make this pod special, so that there might be, say if this is 4th grade, maybe there's a large number 4 here or something that tells you, and then there's a color here. We paint the brick so that each pod can have its own associated color, or maybe it has some sort of specialized graphics. If we develop some themes for the school, like environmental themes, this might be the ocean pod or something like that, and there's imagery associated with oceans. But we do something really special here to signify the special character, the special identity of this pod. And we do something in the ceiling as well. Maybe there's a little dropped area of ceiling that also has some color, has some specialty lighting in it to light what's on the front there, to make each pod's entrance unique. What's happening within the pods then is, again, like I described before, we're building the partitions between the classrooms, making the toilet rooms accessible, all new finishes, new HVAC, new windows and doors, that sort of thing. Looking at the next slide. So what you have right now is each pod just has this large open area. There's some little pieces of wall here and there that suggest classrooms. A lot of times this one is just totally open to the corridor, and there's furniture all lined up here to try and create a separation between the circulation and the classroom. We're talking about replacing that with actual walls, so each classroom has a very distinct border. And then a collaboration zone at the hub, which provides space for breakout work, or if 2 different teachers want to send kids out to do group work, or any sort of specialized instruction or presentation, there's these collaboration zones at the heart of each pod. And then a reorganization of the toilets and storage and electrical rooms in this area to create accessible toilet rooms. The next slide will show you like an enlarged view of this with a suggestion of what the furniture might be. And these are a couple of views of what that collaboration zone might look like. So looking at this side, you could have presentation wall, you could have some sliding marker boards that lead you into a large storage area for this pod. And then on this side, you could have your casework, refrigerator, microwave, sink, and some storage on this wall. And we could put a skylight or smaller skylights in this area so that we can get some daylight into the space. And then by putting glass in these doors and these sidelights here, these 2 classrooms that don't have exterior exposure in most of the pods, this one you can see does, but in most of these pods, these 2 classrooms don't get any daylight. So the idea is to borrow some daylight from the center space by putting a lot of glass right here at the entrance to each pod. In the library, all new finishes there as well, all new lighting, HVAC, just like the rest of the school, all new shelving, and a new layout. We'll just go ahead and jump to the layout here. So currently, the size of your library is such that current codes require the doors swing out instead of in, so we're talking about making that switch here so that the doors would swing out. Also, there's no windows in this library at all, so it feels sort of closed in. We were talking about putting some interior windows here that give you some views, some connection to the corridor that makes the library feel a little bit roomier. Also gives visibility into the library, gets kids a little more excited and energized by what happens inside libraries. But then beyond that, all new shelving in the library, new finishes, really liven it up and make it seem like a more exciting space. And then in the pre-K wing, what we're doing there is largely just new finishes, some new casework, new visual display boards, and again correcting those ADA issues that you have with the toilet rooms. Next slide. And also in this pre-K wing, there's this zone right here that has just a tremendous number of toilets and lavatories in it. We're not sure why there's so many toilets in that one part of the building, but we have done our code calculations about how many toilets are required, how many lavatories are required, and we talked to the school about the number of toilets and lavatories that work for them. There doesn't seem to be any reason to have so many bathrooms right up here in this part of the plan. So we have reconfigured this to just have 2 toilet rooms and a custodial closet in this area. But to use this area more efficiently, to get a couple of counselors here, and I mentioned before that BAM lab was moving from the main office location. It's going to come out here and be located with the pre-K wing. But the two counselors that are here work with this BAM lab space, so getting them into sort of a suite of counseling and BAM lab works well for the school. It's something that the principal is excited about doing. And then here's the space. This is your existing gymnasium that I mentioned before that has a stage at it already. We're talking about, in this space, new finishes, new lighting, new HVAC. The most important finish change in here is that currently this is just vinyl tile on your floor. We'd like to see that as an actual sports flooring, a cushioned sports flooring that's a lot better on the knees and ankles. And then replacing this old accordion folding partition that's not a very effective partition and doesn't offer any acoustical separation, and having instead both a panel partition, which is sections of 4-foot sliding panels that when it's closed, it really does create actual acoustical separation between the gym and the space if you needed to use it for instruction or something like that. But then also replacing the main curtain as well. So it can function both as a dramatic performance space, but also can get that acoustical separation, so it can be a learning space as well. And then beyond that, of course, finishes, new ceilings over the stage, other minor cosmetic improvements. I believe that is our last slide there. That gives you a very quick overview of all the things we hope to do. And I want to open it up to you all for any questions.
Can you go back to the slide on the gym, please? The steps that are coming from the stage down to the gym floor. I saw the same arrangement in my grandson's gym, and my immediate concern was the way kids are in a gym is somebody go flying into those steps, and his steps at his school were pretty rigid material, and I understand steps have to be rigid. What can you do to child-proof these steps?
So this arrangement is a pretty common one. There's two common arrangements. One is that your stage just has a flat front and it has a couple of sets of steps up on either side. That's a perfectly appropriate approach, and we do it that way all the time. Gives you the option to, if you have children circulating across the stage for some function, that can work. Having the steps all the way across the front, also very commonplace. It gives a great place for photo opportunities when you want to tier the kids, or choir presentations when you want to have the kids be able to stand in tiers and make a presentation to the audience. That's something that we can discuss with your leadership and with the principal about what they think is best. We are planning on replacing those finishes, but the plan would be to replace them with similar finishes, just much nicer. So there really wouldn't be any more child-proof than they are now. But we can certainly open up that discussion moving forward if there's a different way we want to approach it.
I have a question. I'm just interested in the thought process on when you go into the main office, you have the main office and the clinic, but then the administration is across the hall. Separating that instead of having them all together and maybe having that workroom across the hall. What's that reasoning behind that, separating that?
Well, that's another thing that can work either way, and there's different preferences where that is concerned. I've known a lot of principals who don't want to be behind the main office. They feel like that makes them less accessible to students, less accessible to parents, and they have what's a decentralized office arrangement is actually commonplace, where you have this sort of administrative hub, but then your principal and your assistant principal, they're out in the school. Sometimes they're together, sometimes they're distributed, and that helps them with, if they're more centrally located, maybe they can get to other parts of the school more quickly. That may not be really the main issue here, but it's definitely not uncommon to pull the principal and assistant principal out, or maybe only one of them remains with the main office. We presented a couple of different options to your principal and assistant principal. They really like this one. Another set of principals might think differently, but this is the arrangement that they were most happy with.
Any other questions for him? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and explain what we got going. Real excited about it.
Okay, next on our agenda is discussion on accessibility of opt-out forms in the Student Code of Conduct and yearly review of counseling and school supplemental materials. So basically, I think this is probably just the first of many conversations, but just a place for us to start having a conversation of how we want those opt-out forms to look moving forward. I think one thing that came up multiple times recently when we were talking about the guidance curriculum and referring parents to the opt-out form, it's kind of somewhere between pages 13 or 14 in the current handbook. And so, one thing we were thinking, how else could we present these opt-out forms? We plan to have our website updated and hopefully have all of these forms more easily accessible online to parents, but also moving forward, what do we really want our handbook to look like? Do we want every form that a parent will need to see and look at to be pulled up front of the handbook? Do we want an appendix in the back? Do we want some kind of supplemental pages to go with the handbook? Basically, some way to present it so that it doesn't feel like you're digging through 30 pages of handbook and finding an opt-out form here or there, or some kind of permission form here or there. Kind of have all of that combined.
And I think that would be easy. So the student handbook is worked on over the summer, and Mr. Smith is actually in charge of doing that. And so this handbook has been this way, I've only been here a year and a half, and it was here the way it is. That was my first year. We did it this year. But we can definitely reorganize that. And I think there probably needs to be an appendix with opt-out forms in either the front or the back, wherever we would want to put those, so that they are accessible. But then also with our new website, one of the things would be to have just a tab on our website that allows all of the opt-out forms to be listed for whatever a parent may want or need an opt-out form for. And those could be specific to schools too. So we could have the division opt-out forms overall for the school division, but then at each school site on their website, they could have the division, and then any of the other opt-out forms that may be particular to their school site. But that would be moving forward, and I know in visiting with Mr. Grant that our plan is to have our new website up and running for the start of school year in August. We do have that committee put together to look at possible vendors to provide that service to us, and that would just be one of the things that we would have to make sure that we noted and put those on.
So then a teacher or principal could easily just send it to central office if they had an event coming up at their individual school that you would need an opt-out form?
Yeah, so most of the time the TICs are responsible for the school website. So it's done at the school site. What you find out with some websites is that they're a little hard to get things on. Like I'm not sure, like with ours, I'll just say some schools have such old systems that you need to know code how to put things on the website. With these new vendors, it's basically easy to put on to where not just could a TIC put it on, but a secretary or the teacher or the principal themselves. But we also want to make sure we limit access to where only certain people are putting things on and we don't get overloaded, or maybe we have something go on the website that shouldn't be on the website. So we do want to limit and make sure we have the checks and balances when it comes to what is being put on the website. So we could actually just have multiple people at the school site be able to upload once it's approved to that school website. It does not have to come to central office.
And like on the main site, you could have a general for all the forms that everybody has to fill out, and then have a link directly even to each of the schools for additional school-based, you can click on your school. So if a parent is navigating the general county website and they go there, they can just click from there to that particular school for any additional forms, possibly.
I'm sure
You can have it
that
linked.
I'm sure that is possible. You know, I'm not the technology guy.
That way, I mean,
But I'm
that
sure
way we
that-
just keep it,
Yeah,
you don't have to click everywhere.
Yeah, instead of going back to the tab to go to the school, to go to the opt-out form, if it was just on the opt-out form, if there's a tab on the division's website, that tab will then list all of our forms, and then there'll be direct links to the other schools' opt-out forms where those parents could directly go to there. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
So the parents would still have to hunt it down?
Well, no, it would just be, everything would be there on the
On the-
link.
Okay, so they'd still have to hunt it down. So the opt-out form currently is on page 23. It's buried in the handbook. It doesn't give them the option to opt out of certain points. It only gives them the option to opt out of all guidance, which includes academic guidance, career guidance, and then also personal social counseling. They either opt out of everything or they opt out of nothing. And then in the personal social counseling, it's like 2 sentences. It doesn't actually tell what those controversial classes are going to be teaching. So what I would like to see is for each school to give a full list, like what you handed out at the back to school nights or the open house nights, so that the parents are aware of specifically what their children are going to be learning, and then given the opt-out for that. And that shouldn't have to then require them to be opted out of all of their career guidance and academic guidance just because they don't want their children doing social emotional learning. And I want to make sure that this is shown to them and presented to them. It shouldn't be something they have to seek out. I mean, if we can send out a text, a phone call, and an email for everything else, we should be able to make them fully aware of this. And then the other thing that stood out to me during our guidance presentations was they explained that very few students opted out, and then once students did opt out, all it took was a call from the guidance counselor to talk the parent into putting them back in. I don't like that idea at all. A parent should not be bullied into changing their mind. If they fill out the opt-out form, they should be opted out, and that should be the end of the discussion. It shouldn't be, they shouldn't be accosted and harassed until they comply with attendance.
So I don't think that we're suggesting that anyone's accosting anyone. I spoke at length with Ms. Frankel at Ressie, and she told me how many parents had opted out at the beginning of the school year. It was very few. And she basically walked me through the steps of what that looks like when she gets those opt-out forms. She has a conversation. Some of the parents had very specific questions that they just wanted more information on. She sent them, at the time, the second step information that she had. She talked about what she does within the guidance classes with those parents. She was able to just explain it. There was absolutely nothing bullying about that. She just had a very open conversation with those parents. And then if they still chose to opt out, of course they still choose to opt out, but sometimes they just wanted more information, and she was more than happy to provide that.
So if we provide the information up front, then there shouldn't be any need for that.
You're right, which is kind of the second part, and I think actually Dr. Ballinger mentioned this when we were doing the open houses, that maybe in the future we could just have that, something similar set up at our back to school nights. All the schools did a great job at those guidance nights that they had set up a couple of weeks ago, so everybody's already going and looking at your lockers, looking at all your classes, getting all of your other information. Something very similar to that on those nights would be a perfect time for parents to be able to review material in person and have those forms available and have counselors present to answer those kind of questions.
And it is a great opportunity because that's when most parents are coming in with questions as far as who the teacher is, what's going to be, you know, what's the goals this year. So it is an opportunity, and we could set that guidance counselor to the side, or guidance counselors, and allow them to be able to have that set up somewhere, maybe if it's in the library, or maybe because their office is going to be too small, but have a location that parents that want more information, they can come in, they can review the material, and they can ask questions. And we would have opt-out forms there available for them.
That's what we did with the FLE program in the middle school. We put the materials in the library. They could come in, review them, We also had the opt-out forms. And we also had a list up there if the parent had questions, and they would, write their name and contact information, and they would pass it down to us, and we would call them. And we didn't try to sell the program, we just explained what was in the program. And be surprised how many parents appreciated that and said, well, I was going to opt them out, but I see what you're doing now. Okay, especially FLE, there's so many, avenues that could get sidetracked on there. So it worked out real well. So I don't have any problem with them calling and double checking.
Well, and I think another thing that we could do to be proactive is many offices, when you walk in, they'll have a display of papers, they'll put the latest flyer up of what's happening in the school, that there can always be a section there for the parent information, and they're always available there too. If it was that way, they see it, they know it's available and it's accessible. That way, if you walk in the front office, it's accessible there, it's accessible online, it's presented at the beginning of the year. There's multiple avenues for the parents to have access if they so choose.
And of course, we would still provide the opportunity for any parent that wants to come in and spend additional time throughout any part of the school day or year, throughout the year, that they can come in and look at whatever we're doing. We've always been open, and so still make that available to them.
We were always open for after school, and sometimes can it come in at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and a lot of times we had stuff going on, so it wasn't a big deal, and could actually sit down with the parent one-on-one and explain what was going on. And that was also good, because then they could make a decision. So some parents would sign up after, some would say no, so,
I would think we might want to get some feedback from the guidance counselors about this form, because I do agree it's kind of all or nothing. On the other hand, if you put like all these check boxes, it gets overwhelming, but the guidance counselors are the ones who have these conversations with parents and know like how does this usually go, what are the things, and they might be able to guide us on how to find that middle ground between not necessarily being all or nothing, but not also being overwhelming.
I think, all this is good opportunity for parents to be able to come in and see what they want and actually make a choice for their child. So we can definitely be sure to look at that. As far as our opt-out forms, we'll work on that. Mr. Smith with trying to find a location on moving into next year with our student code of conduct. And then I know Mr. Grant was here earlier, but I've got notes here to look at our website and make that a focus. Then our back to school nights, and then look at feedback from guidance counselors on those forms, and make multiple forms if we need to have multiple forms. If it is certain programs that we may need to look at just an individual form for that. So, and it may be a learning process as we move through this, that we may start the year not thinking we need a form, but then, hey, we have this come up, we need to put another form up there.
Well, sometimes there are programs that get added throughout the year.
This form is also generic in the sense it's like K to 12. So it might even be an option. Counselors might, maybe an elementary, and then a middle and high school or something form too, even, which would not, be able to provide more information specifically for elementary, provide more information specifically for middle school, instead of it all being one.
And could we add, or is it possible to do an opt-out for just specific lessons of second step? Because really, there was a lot of it that was fine. It was those certain key lessons that parents were objecting to. So it would be nice if they could participate in, the kindness lessons, but then not participate in learning to be a disruptive social justice warrior. So they could just opt out of the controversial ones, or whichever ones they deem that they don't want their child to be a part of.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Sounds like it comes back to asking the counselors what their
Yeah,
form might
I'll
look like.
have that conversation with them on the forms and creating that. So Okay.
So if you have a perfect timeline, when would the handbook be ready for printing?
So,
Normally, that's done during the, last year was my first year doing so. Normally it's done during the summertime. Normally, we have that together in July. Once we get like the policies that like right now with the General Assembly and so forth, they'll have some policies that will come down to DSBA and those type of things. And some of the things that we have in our code of conduct for our students and those type of things will change because of that. So we'll put those in. And normally, it's the 1st of July. It's one of the first things I completed this past year. Normally the 1st of July to get those out, and we normally have those out in August.
So would it be clear that at our May work session, there's some sample opt-out?
yeah, we could look at that. I mean, that should
See
be
where it's
nothing
going.
but, that should, I mean, with guidance counselors, we should be able to do that. I would think so. Look at just samples and see what we could be looking at. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Does that sound reasonable? Any other discussion at the moment on this? Discussion on superintendent's proposed budget. Dr. Ballinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's see if Tim's still hooked up here. All right. So I'm just going to highlight a couple things. And one, I want to thank my staff that have been working on this diligently. We have not been able to put the focus that we wanted to on it early on, but we have kicked it in high gear here lately. And also we were waiting on certain things. So there was some contracts that had to be negotiated. There's looking at different things as far as that. But I'd like to draw your attention to, as I start looking at this, to page 8. So page 8, this is our budget highlights. And when you look at this, we're looking at a 5% salary increase, and that is inclusive of the experience step for teachers. We're looking at 23 and a half new positions, salary scale adjustments, position enhancements, supplemental enhancements, additional non-labor supports, ground maintenance, and capital projects. When you look at the highlights, we are going to make a focus on building up our textbook fund. So we would add $370,670. The additional positions, $1,592,269. Position and supplemental enhancements, $390,947. And then additional non-labor, $1,213,446. Now, of course, we still have the $1 million in a transportation fund, and we are waiting. I think Mr. Mitchell said that he's hoping to hear back within the next couple of weeks if we were able to receive the grant or not. So we're waiting still on that grant. We did apply for that DEQ grant back in, I want to say, October. And so once we find out if we receive that, then we'll be able to, I think we put in for 8 to 10 buses in that grant. If we do not get that grant, then we're going to go ahead and make the purchase. The reason we want to wait on that grant is because for every bus that you purchase, they send you back $20,000. So if we purchase 10 buses, they will send back $200,000, which will help us buy 2 additional buses. So, back when this first started in 2009, the grant was actually a 50-50 match. And so I actually wrote this when I was in Oklahoma, and it was basically a buy one, get one free, because they paid you half the cost of each bus. And I purchased 2 buses under that grant. This is a similar grant, but now they've reduced that cost all the way down to $20,000 as far as the reimbursement. But it is an opportunity, but it will help us. So as soon as we find out if we are the recipients of that, then we will go ahead and work through that process. If we're not, we're going to go ahead and purchase anyway. and then we'll look at applying for it again next year. So also when we look at this capital improvement funds, from our federal programs, we do have $8,100,024 available for projects, and then also we have in a capital improvement fund the roof replacement for Blue Ridge Tech and LFK. Since we're looking, as we go through these designs and engineering, they have to do the roofs, and so we're waiting on those things to get done. Of course, with LFK, if you're replacing HVACs, you don't want to put the roof on until if you have roof-mounted units. Now, Blue Ridge Tech, we are getting the schematic for that, so that we can go ahead and get that roof on Blue Ridge Tech. So we've been waiting on the schematics to make sure we can move forward with those. Down below that, in that graph, you can see the new positions that we're looking at adding. Again, another English language teacher, 2 art teachers, 2 elementary school counselors, 2 technology integration coaches, 1 director of communications, board certified behavior analyst, 2 librarian assistants, moving a part-time secretary to a full-time, instructional assistants, 1 math coaches, 2 pathways and connections instructional assistant, 1 a shared HVAC technician with the county. We're both in the need of needing an additional HVAC person, and so that we split right now. I think we have 1 that works on the county, and since we need an additional, they need an additional, we're going to try with 1 and continue to split that. Groundskeeping. So currently our grounds, that was done by Parks and Rec. I think that transferred over probably 2-3 years ago. I'm not sure. I know it was, I believe, before my time, so that was transferred. But in working with and talking with Dr. Daly, that is going to come back to us. So we have to budget for grounds, and I'll work through this as we move forward. But 4 groundskeepers, transportation secretary, and a transportation mechanic. And
The library assistant, or where would?
High school.
High school.
And when you look at the SOQs state that you need to have 2 librarians for every 1,000 students. And we are setting at both of our high schools somewhere between 850 to 870 students. And that's with 1 librarian. So we're only really about 150 to 200 students away from needing 2 librarians. So those librarians need that assistant to help with the students that they're serving in those high schools.
And the transportation secretary, is that adding a second?
So-
Because there's probably already 1 there.
There's 1 there. So what we need here, we do a lot of service within our transportation department on the sheriff's department's vehicles. And so right now, the 1 administrative assistant that we have there, she's doing all of the purchase orders, she's doing everything, and that's all really taking her away from her job of transportation, because it's working on all of the, when it comes down to as far as the county needs with our police department, with the sheriff's department. And so this is to allow that person to focus on the ordering, the billing, also the help me out, bud.
Just invoicing and those type of things we're looking.
Purchase orders.
Purchase orders, and also the just maintenance, just general maintenance logs. There's a lot of things that position should, that we have should not be doing. They need to be focusing on transportation and the students, and they're spending all of their time on this other stuff, which is drawing that out. So it's really for that. And the transportation mechanic is, we have been, right now Mr. Mitchell is talking to the fire department, since we have a great partnership with the sheriff's office and their vehicles, and we're in communication now that they may want us to look at that, and so I did go ahead and add that right now for 1 position, but that would be to help the fire department with their maintenance costs on their vehicles as well. So that.
On the actual fire trucks.
Yes, ma'am.
we don't need to get specialty lifts or tools for repairing fire trucks, they can use things such as these for buses, or?
So it would depend. There may be certain things that we may need to get. And again, if it's something for that specific vehicle that we don't use on buses, then of course, that would just probably be billed back. Because if it's a certain tool or a certain piece of equipment that is only for this type of vehicle, and that's all it's going to be used for, then, if we can't use that on our bus, then we're not going to, we shouldn't absorb that cost. So we would bill that back. And typically what we get good pricing, some great pricing on parts. And so one of the things that I was talking to Mr. Mitchell the other day, and one of the savings that we see with our sheriff's office is that he told me that he can build out a police cruiser for around $7,000 to $8,000. Where right now, if they were to go and get bids somewhere else, they would be looking at $15,000 to $16,000, almost double of what we're able to do it for. And so, there is that great partnership. It also helps save the county money. It helps save the sheriff's office money. And
So this transportation secretary would be more handling mechanical stuff, so it'd be more like a service writer?
like a service writer, yes
Okay.
ma'am. Be more of a service writer.
Well, with these school buses, I would think, coming out of a fleet of trucks myself, I would think that the accuracy and detail in the service records is absolutely necessary just for liability issues in case something happened. Just one example is tire inventory. You know where that tire's been in your fleet. That's a very tedious thing. So, yeah, I see the need for one person staying focused on a lot of that.
Yeah, and this, and we would just be billing the county back for 1 week
Sure.
when that person was working on the fire trucks, because that's, otherwise they would still be our employee, and they may be working on a bus, but at the same time, we may have to put 5 people on a vehicle if it needs to hurry up and get out instead of just one. And I would encourage everybody to, especially the new board members, go by the shop down there. When they get one of those police cruisers in,
It's cool.
it's neat to see how it comes in, and then when they have a finished product, and the job that they actually do. So they do a great job, and I would encourage you guys to really set up an appointment, go down there and check out the shop and see what's going on. And
I did that, Dr. Ballinger, and they had just finished one of like a swap vehicle or something, and I said to Aaron, let's go for a little ride, but we couldn't, of course we wouldn't do that, but yeah, it is awesome to see what those guys can do. I mean, it's amazing.
And also, that group helps us when we are short bus drivers.
Yeah.
So they have their CDL, so if we're short drivers, and they may drive a route in the morning and then they go work in the shop in the afternoon. But so, any other questions on that page right there? Okay. So I do want to go ahead and move on to the next page, page 9. Again, this is continuing our budget highlights. Increase 2 bus driver contracts from 4.5 to 8 hours. We're going to increase and add new supplements throughout everything. Position enhancements for Dean of Students contracted days from 200 to 220. So deans are on a teacher's contract and they get a supplement. So that means when the teachers leave, they leave. When the teachers arrive, they arrive, but they're part of the administrative team. So we really need our deans to be able to stay 2 weeks after school ends and come in 2 weeks before school starts to help get prepared for it. So we're adding those additional days because those deans need to be there because they are part of the administrative team. And a lot of times what you're seeing are those deans are staying there and working, but really their contract is only for the 200 days. So also position enhancement for 1 speech pathologist to 12 months, and then a position enhancement for 1 social worker to 12 months. Also, you can see down there, We have a new website, or we want a new website, instructional supplies, technology, the comprehensive instructional program, painting and carpet replacement, dual enrollment class student support. What that is I would like to help our students that take dual enrollment classes at LFCC. When you look across the Commonwealth, you have various costs that students pay based upon the region that they work, or the region that they live in. So if you go to Nova, and you live over in that area, and you're a student at one of the high schools there, it costs you $0 to take dual enrollment courses. You go down to Smith County, it costs you, I think it's $56, or maybe it's $100. So there's different percentages. Here it's 25%. So here for one class, it could be that those parents are paying $250, depending upon how many credit hours that course is, because it's paid by the credit. So what I would like to do here is budget $25,000 per semester, which is $50,000. That goes towards just the overall dual enrollment costs at both of the schools to help lessen that effect financially on families with dual enrollment costs. Because as we move away from AP and go more dual enrollment, then I want to make sure that the dual enrollment is affordable for everybody and that there are no barriers to taking those dual enrollment courses. So that's
It's over $300.
okay.
I've paid it.
Yeah, I've paid mine this semester
Yeah,
too.
it's well over 300. So that, I think that would be a nice opportunity where the finances is a barrier. So that's great.
And that may need to go up depending upon seeing how the number of students participate in dual enrollment. But I feel that I want to help, or we need to help take that cost away so that that barrier is not there. I mean, yes, they still are going to have a cost, but it may not be the $300, it may be $100, which would make it more affordable to families or students wanting to take those dual enrollment courses. And it still allows LFCC to provide the services that they need to provide, because they have a budget they need to go through too. And so I know they need their funding as well.
So that'll be for all students equally across the board, or will it be based off of their parents' income? Like, how will that money be distributed?
Sorry. So the goal was it was just going to be straight across the board.
Okay.
I just was going to try to lessen the effect on everybody at first to see what we have. Now I do know also that LFCC, and working with them, they do have donors that also help out in providing some funds to cover tuition for those that may need some little extra help. And so, if we do it across the board and then we see that we need additional assistance, then we can go and see if there are any donors that have helped to provide funds to cover that cost. And then, of course, we are looking at contracted grounds maintenance for our facilities, since we are taking back over the grounds at all of our schools from Parks and Rec again. We wanted to look at and make sure that we have the best fit for us. And so we did have contracts, or we did send out for bids. I think we're going to rebid. Because numbers were a little higher than we were expecting. So we are going to look at maybe doing some changes on that. And when is that going to go out?
Very soon. We'll get that reposted early next week.
So contracted ground maintenance.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the increase to add new supplements, I know on the original paperwork you gave us, is that all the same? Has there been any other changes other than what you listed here?
No, so there's
It would
probably,
be the-
yeah, there's probably been some updates on that.
Because I mean, it would be like to increase the IRT, the dean supplements, I mean, all the ones that are listed here. I'm going to read them all, but is there anything additional other than that that
So,
might fall
let
under
me-
there, you think?
I don't have that document on me, so I don't know what we have listed. So I'll just look through these. Let's see here. I believe, is this the updated one, Mr. Valentine? Increase 2 bus drivers, that it starts with that one. Then we have the IRT Dean Supplement, 2,500. Increase Dean of Students 200 days. Add supplement for VHSL robotics. 5,000 supplement for middle school assistant principals. Increased degree supplements across the board. Was that one on there? Increase coaching team leader, department chair, supplements 10%. Then you have the speech and social worker, supplement for assistant superintendents, 10,000. And then a 2,500 supplement for administrative assistants for the care support.
Yeah, I don't think we had those two. Those last two, we didn't have. Can you repeat that again?
Yes, so that is a $2,500 supplement for administrative assistant for the care support because we've been getting a lot of those grants. And then 10,000 supplement for grade 31 assistant superintendent.
You don't have that written anywhere in here?
Well, that was added, so that was probably the first one. And then as far as,
And we didn't get the update on this little thing tonight.
we've been working on and looking at our budget. And now that would be, so you're going to find it, if you're looking at the budget document, go to page, if you're wanting to look for the supplements, we put them on the salary scales. So all salary scales will have the updated supplements on them, and that starts on page 28. And so you can see the supplements added and for each specific class or grade when it comes to the salary scales.
I'm sorry, you said page 27?
It's actually on 29.
29 is where the chart actually
29,
starts.
okay.
Yeah, 28 is just the cover sheet for the salary scales. And so all the salary scales, those are listed there, and that's where you will find all the supplements, working all the way back to page 52. I think that kind of ends our supplements when it comes to, I believe that's coaching and some other things. But all of our supplements are listed.
So those additions that you were just saying, is that,
Yeah, it's on page 40. One of them is on page 41. And
One's on 41. You also have, if you want to look at the administrative cares. Is that one it? I can't remember.
I haven't come across it yet.
I think with that 2,500 for the supplemental cares support may not be in there because that's throughout the duration of the cares. Because that's an increased burden due to handling all of those cares grants. So that is the one administrative assistant that works through all those cares grants and funds and provides. So
okay. So then
if you deal with federal programs, it can be pretty time consuming. Since I think we're up to about CARES 8 or CARES 9 now. 9 new grants, 8 new grants that she's working on that she's never had to work for or work on before. Want to go on?
I think so.
Okay. On page 12, this basically just, our budget is built on 4,989 students. For next year, you can see the graph that we are expecting as of March 31st this year, 4,979 students. But our budget, and that is from the state, that their projection for us next year will be 4,989, so that is what our budget is built upon. Here you can see the graph that when looking at our revenue, 51% will come from the state, 40% will come from the county, federal 8%, but that's an increase because of the CARES. Typically our federal is a little lower than that, and then your miscellaneous of 1%. On page 15, this is a breakdown and comparison between the 2 years. And as you can see, the FY22, just when you look at state, and what I want you to take in consideration, state and state sales tax, those really, that's state. So when you look at combining, we separate those to show our sales tax is different. But that is all state funding. When you look at your three, your state, your local, and your federal, state sales tax and state, you can add those together or separate them as we separate them here to show what our state sales tax actually is. When you look at the other state funding, you can see that we have an increase from the FY22 of $2,486,823. That's 39.6% of the overall revenue. Local, you will see an increase of $559,703. That would be our ask this year from our local government. When you look at the federal, again, this is tied into CARES with our CARES positions and other things that we have out there. You can see that that's an increase of $3,296,356. And if you remember, we had to actually go early on. Well, it was kind of towards the end of the first semester that we had to go back because we started the school year and we didn't have in our appropriations the CARES funds for all those positions. So we had to go back to increase our appropriations to make sure that we can spend those CARES funds. You guys had to vote for that to increase the appropriations, and then we had to take that to our local governing body. And we're going ahead and putting that in now so that hopefully we don't have to go back and ask for an increase in appropriation. But really when you look at this, and then you can see our sales tax, an increase of $750,380. We do see a decrease of $107,725. And basically what that comes from, that's the decrease from the technology person that we were billing the county for, or maybe as a position and a half, but we were billing the county for that. Now that they have their own in-house, we take that out of our budget. Sure. And so that's the reduction there when it comes from with our other revenue. So you can see that the total for the FY23, $70,930,366, with an increase of $6,985,537 for next year. And really, when you look at that, you know, your big ticket, of course, your CARES is a big portion of that, and then the basically $3 million in additional state funding for this year. And then if you look on page 16, that just kind of gives you a breakdown of the state revenue.
So I'm sorry, on page 15, so does this mean with the local increase of $510,000, we have to ask the Board of Superintendents to increase our budget that much?
So that would be the local portion. So yes, we would ask the local governing bodies to, so right now for this budget year, what we got from the county for the local portion was $27,720.
Right.
And we're going to ask for $28,279,703, which is an increase of $559,703 out of our total budget.
Right, but we are asking for an extra $500,000 from the county, so we're asking for a tax increase?
No, I don't know if that's how the county does that. If
Okay.
it's within their budget or what they have.
Okay.
So basically, that's just the difference between 22 and 23.
Yes. And a big portion of that is, of course, as you'll find out later, is the big portion of that is the grounds.
Yeah.
So if you look at page 16, the state revenue kind of breaks that down for you. Again, when we look at our revenue overall, the increase in state funding is projected at $3,237,203. We did see increases in our SOQ programs of $2,396,337, incentive programs $497,555, lottery funded programs $357,829. We did see a decrease at the state level from $14,518 in categorical funding. And so again, the local increase that we're asking for is only, I believe it's 2.02%. You can see that down there at the bottom of that page. And that would be over what we asked for last year. When you look at page 17, this is a breakdown of our title programs. At the top, you can kind of see, if you look at Title I and then special education or flow through preschool, that's typically, along with our Perkins, what you're going to see in our federal programs. But we did add the CARES, and so you can see that CARES funding that we have with our positions and then some other initiatives that we're doing, that is added this year, and that's $3,296,356. And of course, that is all federal money, so that doesn't require anything from the local governing body or. Okay, on page 20, this gets into our expenditure report, and then you can see that, of course, instruction, what it consists of, and we are going to look at a 5% raise for all related for all employees, inclusive of the STEP for years of experience. Update the social worker scale, add additional positions throughout the division, adjust supplements, and adjust contracted days for identified positions. We did make it a push last year to be regionally competitive with our salaries. You can again see in the instruction, these are the positions that are from the first page that will be tied to instruction. And then I give a little breakdown as to why we're bringing those positions on. If you go ahead and look at page 21, again, this breaks down into the administration and health. You can see that there's a director of communications there, a speech teacher moving from 10 to 12 months, the social worker moving from 10 to 12 months. Again, then moving on into transportation, you can see the additions down there, administrative assistant, service writer, 4.5-hour contract to 8-hour, and mechanic, and we designated that fire and rescue. Again, with each of these positions and with each of these categories throughout our budget, we're looking at the 5% increase inclusive of the STEP. So when you get funded from the state will only fund your SOQ positions. So that may be this teacher, but not this teacher, because it's not an SOQ position. So you can't give this teacher a salary increase and not give this one. So it goes throughout the entire division. So we try to push that out to everybody. Looking at our operations and maintenance, we've included $50,000 here for carpet replacement at Hilda J. Barber and paint. There's also, you can see the increase there that we figured the cost of the division right now, we kind of put a placeholder in there. We hope we can take that number down, because as you notice, as noted tonight, we are going to rebid our grounds maintenance, but we did put a placeholder right now because we needed to have a document ready as far as with our budget. And of course, as we move throughout this is a proposed budget, and our final budget will definitely be possibly different than what this proposed budget is. But we do have that placeholder of $425,000. This includes the 4 staff members, contracted services to handle the groundskeeping, and the 4 mowers that we would need in order to do the job that we would need. One of the things why are you asking, why are we doing some grounds and some people? So staff members, we're looking at at both of our high schools, our athletic fields need specialized care. And that's one of the things that we've struggled with over the past couple of years, is that we have had some issues with our fields. And when you look at your football fields, your baseball fields, your softball fields, those fields take time, those fields take energy, and we need people to specialize on those. So the goal is to really look at two at each high school that will focus on their fields. And of course, those people will do other things, not just on those fields. I mean, they will also be the ones that may be delivering, doing some service work in the wintertime, or mulching in the wintertime, providing other services that we need done throughout the school year. But their focus would be typically making sure our fields are in great shape.
Have you priced out at all, like contracting with competitive field?
We haven't, but Greg, I think you have some experience. with
Yes, I
contracting
have
that.
done that before. First, it's not inexpensive to do that. In addition to the mowing of the fields, you have the typical fertilization, aeration. Today's laws have changed a little bit with regard to all things stormwater management. So you have to have a certified management plan, nutrient management plan provider, do your applications of the necessary fertilizers, etc., because of stormwater runoff. So it's not a cheap endeavor to sub that piece of it out. My recommendation was, again, we maintain the competition fields in-house. They'll also do the field preparation, whether it's soccer or football, the lining of the fields, so to speak. So, and that's a big time consumer for the athletic or activities directors. And sometimes these fields need mowing twice a week, depending upon what events they schedule. So, yeah, they're not inexpensive to maintain, unfortunately. And we want good turf on the fields for the kids, for the safety.
I was just curious
Yeah.
about the cost comparison, contracting it out versus
Yeah. And
hiring
honestly,
on.
I only know of 2 firms that specialize in competition field maintenance. In all the years I've been doing this, and they're kind of the regional provider for the area that we're in, so
Okay.
they're hard to come by.
Thank you, Mr. Livesay. Also, we saw an increase of 2.5% with our custodial contract. That's $52,000 for next year. You have the debt service there. That went up a little bit from last year, $683. Our technology, and so really, when you look at everything, the main goals, as I mentioned on the first part, 5% raise. We're addressing a lot of needs now and future needs. So the total for the FY23 would be $70,930,366. Now let's roll into the expenditure side of things. That was just the revenue. So when we look at the expenditure, that starts on page 23, and you can see that the pie chart there, where that all breaks down. One of the things that we did do is we removed the contingency reserve. We threw that back up into the budget, so that would no longer be there available for us. It's going to go back into the budget. And I apologize about my nagging cough. On page 24, that gives you a little bit more of a breakdown of what we're looking at. Again, when we look at instruction, with the proposed budget for the 22-23 school year, $55,324,970. Admin, attendance, and health, $2,944,590. Pupil transportation, $3,020,471. Operations and maintenance, $7,458,516. Facilities, I'm going to hold on that one right now because we'll talk about that a little later. Debt service, $683,495. Technology, $1,498,321. Now that $92 million, that includes the debt service, or sorry, the facilities. One thing that I learned last year when, of course, I was new, Dr. Daly was new, and when we were going through the budget, I was told that it's done one way. Dr. Daly and I, we were trying to figure out, and he said he wants to know what we need, what our true needs are. and that if we need facilities, we need to put it in our budget. Last year, I didn't do that. So this year, I'm putting the facility needs in the budget. So that's where that 20, you can see that amount, 21,862,644. So we added that to the budget this year as a need, and that is the need for LFK, the need for the need for Blue Ridge Tech, and then starting on something for E. Wilson Morrison. So those are the needs that we have. And I'll go into those needs when we go into the next document, when we look at capital improvement. So when you look at capital improvement on page 26, you can see that again, this is where that 21,862,644 comes from. Now the reason that dollar amount is there, we have as a division available to us from federal dollars, we have $8,100,025. From the capital improvement that we have setting with the county, we have an additional $1 million. So that's a total of $9,100,025. If you go down a little bit and you look at the LFK, what is the projection of that project? Well, we went back and kind of reevaluated where we were getting our projections. So a lot of our projections were coming from, I believe OWPR, is that correct?
Yes.
And what we were noticing is a lot of their projections were way under. And so Buck and Greg looked at current markets and talking to our new current architect to see what similar projects just went for. And as we find out what they cost, we can be able to update those. But we went through and adjusted what we thought maybe the costs were. So when you look at LFK, we're saying, okay, is this a $20 million project for this renovation, or is it a $16 million project? Now, a lot of times you don't know until you open the bids. But what we do know is that we have $8,600,025 available for this project. Now, if we do not get any funding from the county to help support in this project, then we will have to value engineer everything down to $8 million and see what we can get for our $8 million, which would probably be the HVAC, and that may be about it. Also, when you look, now that 8.6, that's also half because the roof out of that $1 million was going to come over to LFK. Then you have Blue Ridge Tech, that's $500,000. And when you look at that, that'd be the request to use that $500,000 set in that CIP again for the roof at Blue Ridge Tech. So it's already setting there. It's not something anybody has to give more additional dollars for anything. It's already there. The same thing with our federal dollars. We have to have a number allocated there in order for us to be able to spend it, because it's going to be a reimbursement. So we spend it, they put it back in our account. And then when you look at E. Wilson Morrison, we were going to request, and now right now this is not in any of the funds that we have, but $300,000 for architect and design to start looking at that build there at E. Wilson Morrison. We are spending some money for a concept design. And do we know what we're going to have that concept?
We should have those really any day now.
Okay.
We're actually due this week, so the renderings we're looking for.
So we do have a concept design for something there at E. Wilson Morrison. So we really want to move forward with that as well. Because once we get these things rolling, we need to continue. So in order to really do the full renovation, you're going to need that additional dollar amount for LFK. If we don't get that additional dollar amount, it's okay, but we need to ask for at least $8 million so that we can have that in our budget to spend. And if we need to value engineer, we'll value engineer and get what we can get done. So for $8 million, are we going to be able to get those pods separated into classrooms? Probably not. You may be able to get one pod out of the entire building that way, but the other pods would stay the same. So really it comes from looking at that, but we are asking for that. That way it is in our budget, And as Dr. Daly and I talked last year, he just wanted to know what our true needs are. So I'm giving him our true needs. These are our true needs, so we're going to present them.
So Friday, we had the building committee meeting, and LFK was 16 to 18 million, now we're up to 21 million?
Well, what we did is we looked at the projection is we're saying anywhere between, it could be 16, 18, 19. They haven't given us a hard figure.
Where did you get that?
So, well, really you only get that when you open your bids. Right now, everything is a projection. And that's the thing, it's
Right, we should have a cost estimator that should
And-
be able to
and-
narrow it down more than.
And that is
$10
due
million
to us
yeah.
this Friday. He said on the 18th we would have it. I just learned that today.
so as we
So the
get those,
21 million is, how do we, so it's 18, but now it's 21, are we?
no, that's what we had in our document that we submitted to the county, and we were going off of what that was. So that was a document that we had worked on back early in the year to look at and adjust what we felt true cost may be.
The 16 to 18 is what you had in the document before, the 21?
So in there, the way that it's broken out with the county is that it's broken out in pieces of roof, HVAC, and design. And that's a document that we sent. And in that, I think it is actually around what we put as our estimated cost projection, was around 20, I think it was 14 million for the renovation, 6 million for the HVAC. So it would have been 20 million.
Okay.
But we hope to get this project for 15. I mean, if we can get it for 15, we've already got 8 sitting there, so we've already got half of the project.
Well, I guess I like to have a better ballpark to start things with, you know what I mean?
Well, the thing is, we're trying to be a little more, I guess,
Overestimate.
over than under. Because if you go under, then you're presented, why are you always going over budget?
Yeah, I'll be the one
Because
presenting that, yes. Why is it always over budget?
because what people see is this first estimate. And they think that that's the budget for that project. When truly the budget for the project is only established when you tear open those bids and you lay them all out there and find out who's the lowest bid and add them all up. That's your true budget. And so if we say, yeah, I mean, we could put on there that this project is only going to be $10 million, but then it turns out being $16 million or $18 million, and then what we're going to get is people saying, well, you went over budget by $8 million. When again, that's just a projection. And that's what this is. This is just a projection. Are we projecting that cost to be that high? We hope it's not that high, but could it be that high with inflation? I mean, it very well could be. I mean, we don't know. Could it be 14 million? Could it be 22 million? Right now, we don't know until we get that number from the architectural firm. That will give us a ballpark better than what we're at right now.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The professional estimators.
Right.
That can usually give you a pretty narrow
Right.
window of ballpark. When do we get that number?
So you said that would be Friday.
Friday, that's what was Friday.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were talking about last
Yeah.
Friday.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then with the Eve Wilson Morrison, I think I brought this up before too. With the architectural and design, it's 300,000, but the job is being estimated at 3 million. Typically, those fees are only 7% of the project, so this is 10%. One of the complaints are that these fees are always tending high. So, what are we basing these figures off of?
Again, that's an estimate. We may be estimating low. It may be that project there's 5 million. I mean, we're trying to get a concept of what our needs are there.
Okay.
And once we get that, because we know, what do we need at E. Wilson Morrison? We need a gym. We also need classroom space. Because right now, with their instructional assistants, they're putting them up on the stage. They don't, they're pulling carts around. They need instructional space. So we have to look at something that will allow us to have a facility where children can go in and have physical education, but then we also have additional classroom space that can handle the growth that we're seeing at E. Wilson Morrison.
Do we use a job for an estimating service?
Do we what?
Do we have an estimating service?
So, I'm going to...
Do we ride on a job for that?
So I'm going to, most of the time, I believe all that is done through the...
That's done through the A&E. For example, the A&E does, Raymond Parker does have a professional estimator on house, and that's who's
Okay, so
developing.
we're using
Using them. We don't have one under contract now.
Okay, because I'm
Okay.
just wondering, like, for budgeting purposes, if we could, ride on somebody else's like we had before, and, you pay your $5,000, you actually get like a really good upfront estimate before you proceed with anything. And we could get more numbers that are narrowed down, because they're usually pretty close. They estimated about 1% of what.
Well, most of them, yeah, when you get those. But a lot of times, if you don't have somebody that you're contracting with and you call an architectural firm to give you a price or give you an estimate, and that's what has been, that's what's been done in the past. And so we're trying to nail down things a little closer to what we truly can get them. But I know we have to use that architect, and we will use our estimator for whatever that fee may be or whatever the projected
But
cost
that's
is.
not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, if you look at, like, Alexandria City Schools, right? So they have 4 estimators on a job. They paid $5,000. Before they have paid out anything for these architectural and design costs, you can get an estimate of what these projects are going to cost. Like I said, typically within 1% variance of, it just seems like it would make more sense to do it that way. You get your figure in there first, you find out exactly what you're looking at before the ship has sailed down the road and we've spent $900,000 on a architectural design.
Well, we did bid those out, and they, we did go through the bid process on that, and I think we had...
I'm not saying that you didn't, I'm just suggesting that we look at some of the counties that have these projects and how they're doing them and how they're coming in under, at or under budget, and knowing exactly what they're getting into before things have gone too far down the road.
And I understand what you're saying, and I'm not going to say that I don't disagree. I mean, if we, want to look at that, that's not an issue. But
I think that'd be $5,000 well spent.
But when also you're not always doing these big projects. And so if you, for instance, if we say we're going to go ahead and do a projection estimate on E. Wilson Morrison now, but the project doesn't get done for another 5 years, what is going to be the cost in 5 years versus now? That's the only thing. We have to I just want to be cautious there.
We could plan better if we did that. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and pay $300,000 now and do our architectural design now, and then we might not do the project for years. Well, then those estimates are going to be off. If we just, it's looking at a $70 million budget, spending $5,000 to have a professional estimating firm come in, they can give us a better idea of which ones of these projects, what they're going to be, when we can plan to do them. It's just better due diligence.
What would they do for drawings?
With regard to...
An estimator would need drawings on the E. Wilson Morrison thing, he would need a drawing for the classroom and gyms. So
Well, I
how's he
think
going to
what it
estimate?
is, it's a basic estimator. It'd be looking at, we need to do, just you give the vague description of it, and they give you a more solid ballpark.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just an
We
idea.
can look at that. I don't have a problem with
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, it's just an idea. I get really uncomfortable with such wide, maybe 16, 18 million, maybe 21, maybe, like, it doesn't.
Well, you always hope that your
Oh, I
bids,
don't hope
you always hope
anything,
your bids
but
come in under what your budget is. I mean, don't get me wrong, if we could get this for 12 million, I'd be
Listen, when I go into
happy.
a project and I'm renovating property, I know exactly what I'm spending beforehand. And I mean, you can ask that one right back there. It's coming in on budget. So that's,
Yeah, but a lot of times what, if you, and our estimates have been old, and some of the estimates that were on there were probably 3, 4, 5 years old, or even 6 years old, some of those estimates.
yeah,
And so that's not relevant.
problematic.
And that's not, and when you're making a 10-year plan, and if you look at this, we have a lot of different things, we even rolling into page 27. That plan, those numbers are going to change over time. So it does make it hard if you have that 10-year capital improvement plan. Trying to see what you're going to do now.
I
And then
wasn't
again,
looking at, I'm talking about just
yeah.
right here.
But we can definitely look at that. I don't have a problem with that.
Awesome.
Okay. Then again, last is our salary scales. And then I did want to make note on the last page, page 53. I'm not going to scroll all the way there. There's like 50 some pages here. That basically gives an outline of all of our schools. It gives their age. It gives the square, it gives the acreage. It gives the square footage. It also gives the year that it was built. It gives an update on if there were any renovations or additions to the facilities. And so you can see that all on page 53. Any questions?
Could you add the current capacity of these schools?
Could we add the current capacity?
Enrollment, yeah. What's,
Yeah,
like,
current enrollment.
like, just so we know,
Yeah,
like,
and just
what
update it each
students
year.
are, how close
Yeah.
we are to being
Yeah, that would
max
be
capacity.
Yeah.
That'd be very helpful.
Yes. Yes, we can do it. You might add that? Okay. Yeah. Any questions?
Any other budget questions?
So this is what we'll be going over with the Board of Supervisors
Yes.
on the 22nd?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is my proposed budget, and so this is what we will, I will actually, I think you guys have to actually approve the proposed budget at March. So we will go in and with, next week, with the Board of Supervisors, we'll discuss this one. And then it'll be presented to you guys in March. We'll continue to monitor where the state is as they work, as bills work through, if any changes are made, what adjustments we have to make. And then typically in May, is you will be presented with the final budget for next year. So we're still a long ways away from getting through this budget season.
Next on our agenda, we have the proposed Sodexo food service management contract renewal. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Really, tonight's presentation is just that. It's just sort of to give a little prior knowledge before we actually come before to look at two contracts that we have. The first one being the child nutrition contract renewal, just information. I have Nicole Kinsey here, our Sodexo director and manager and those type of things. So if you have some questions and so forth, feel free to ask me. And I'm sure if I am not aware, Nicole will be. I'd just like to start out with a little bit of just historical background in regards to our contract with Sodexo. On June 18th of 2019, the Warren County School Board entered into an agreement with Sodexo America to manage the food service operation of the school division. Oh, thank you. The agreement contains a clause that allows the contract to be renewed annually for 4 additional one-year periods upon the mutual consent of both parties. The contract amount is based on meals served and basic labor that we use. All our Sodexo, all the cafeteria employees and so forth are all employees of Sodexo. At one time, originally Sodexo was our manager of our cafeteria, but our employees, the food service employees outside of the director and manager and so forth were our employees. And some time ago, as I mentioned, we entered into an agreement with Sodexo, taking over all our food service, which has worked really, really well, and I'll kind of highlight some areas here in just a second. As a school division, we do not pay for any supplies that are not used or meals that are not served. So the way that Sodexo is paid and so forth, it's based upon meals that we actually served. It's not a fixed amount per se. So there's a strong incentive for both Warren County Public Schools for our federal and reimbursement of our meals, and Sodexo for their profit for serving the highest quality meals available to our students. And our relationship with Sodexo has been a model partnership over the years. Some highlights of our current contract that would continue into our next agreement includes, but not all limited to, there's a guarantee for us as a division of a guaranteed return of $72,750. They also provide annual scholarships of $6,000 for some of our students. They fund $6,500 of the backpack food program. They also do a grant of $2,500 to introduce new programs to Warren County. And there's a $1,000 contribution to the Warren County Educational Endowment. Sodexo will continue to promote healthy eating for students and staff and create menus compliant with the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act. They continue to serve fresh fruits and vegetables daily and purchase locally grown ingredients when available. One thing that really stands out with a company of this size is their availability to get supplies during a period of time where getting a lead time on lots of things, including food, can be very far out. Because they're a global business, and they are able to have food and so forth stored at multiple locations throughout the company. So in a way, they're able to store that. So when we get into the situations that everyone's currently in now, lead times of things, we're able to get the food and those type of things. And we've been able to keep a very strong, healthy menu for breakfast and for lunches. Sodexo will continue to employ the food service employees and train the employees on proper food handling, customer service, and safety. We have 48 staff across the kitchens, so 48 food service people throughout the buildings, and 4 total with administration. And everyone is on site. Nicole is here every day, super early, and still super late, and those type of things. So we're very fortunate that the management part is on site. They also have access to a dietitian for nutritional questions and concerns. Another great thing about Sodexo is they have at their corporate level huge marketing departments within their company. I mean, they're able to put signage and those type of things out, create very creative and attractive different type of programs and nutritional value information out that as a school division, if we had it in-house, it's very difficult to do. It's not that we just really don't have a marketing part of the division. They do provide, as I just mentioned, the marketing for the menus and those type of things. Nicole, earlier, we spoke on an app that's called So Happy that's connected to our menus, which provides nutritional information which can go to our school nurses to assist in managing those students who have documented health concerns or allergies or those type of things. So the cost increase for the 2022-2023 school year is 5% for the general support service and 5% for a management fee. Once again, each meal that we serve, there is a management fee and an administrative fee attached to that. The one for lunch, I think, is 16 cents, and the one for breakfast is 13 cents that goes back to Sodexo. But we're reimbursed at a much higher level than that for any meals that we serve. So a 5% is really not even a cent. It's part of a cent. And the management fee is not paid until the program guarantees a minimum financial return, as I mentioned earlier, the $72,750. The actual cost increase is less than 1% of 1% meals that are served. So that increase, if we were to take where we are in a normal traditional year of what we serve, the increase itself at that amount is about $11,000. Our food service, our child nutrition account is a very healthy account for our food services programs at this time. We've done really well through the management of Sodexo over the years. Currently, food is available to all our students for free, and we're hoping free. We're reimbursed federally and those type of things for meals, and we're hoping that that continues, because anything that you can take off of a family is helpful when it comes to finances, and two, just for people to remembering how much to put on their account and those type of things. But once again, it's the whole thing behind this is that if a meal, we only pay, or they only are reimbursed for any meals that are actually served. Even when supplies and so forth come in, and food and those type of things, we're not charged for that until they actually use the food. So if a shipment comes in and those type of things, and there's whatever that fee may be, that we only are charged once we actually use that food through this. The school lunch program is I think it's an amazing program where it's grown to. We've done some second chance type lunch, our breakfast programs for kids who may come in late, or buses that may come in late, and those type of things. The recommendation at the next school board meeting on the 2nd will be to renew the food service contract with Sodexo for an additional 1-year period. And that the contract itself runs from July 1st to June 30th. So we're still are in this current year's contract. We normally, in the past, we've always tried to renew that contract sooner. There are reports and so forth that we send to VDOE. And if there was any type of change that we would need to make, we would definitely need to know in advance. And that since we would not have a budget per se approved and those type of things, the motion would be that the superintendent would be able to sign the agreement for the upcoming school year contingent upon the approval of the 2022-2023 budget. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little historical background, a little bit of what the increase is looking like. The increase itself, it's with inflation at 7% and those type of things, 11,000, which our accounts, as far as with food service, can handle quite easily. I do want to note that this past January, there was a higher reimbursement sent out to schools than that has been in the past. And I'm not sure if it dealt with the pandemic or if it was just...
It wasn't specific on why they increased the rates, but the breakfast rate went up around 15 cents and per meal. And the lunch rate went up around 25 cents per meal just last month in January.
So if you look
we started receiving additional funds per meal from the federal government.
So if you look at adding a part of a penny, a percent per, you pick up that reimbursement. If it's a 25 cent increase per meal, you're still, as a division, gaining 24 more cents for an additional reimbursement.
Has there been any discussion about adding cafeteria aides back in at the elementary school?
Yes.
Yes, we discussed that at the Cabinet 2 on Tuesday.
Yes.
So
Yes, we discussed-
will be. No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We discussed that, yes, at the Cabinet 2 meeting there that we had earlier this week. Cabinet 2 for us is food service, facilities, and transportation. We also include Mr. Hirsch from Special Services and Mr. Grant at times with technology and those type of things. And the funding for that, for the cafeteria assistance, comes from our cafeteria fund.
We're moving
He'll be
those-
happy.
We're moving those back in. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith on food services? Okay, stay right there for the proposed Sodexo custodial contract renewal.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have Mr. Levacy here with me this evening and those type of things, so I'll do the same with the custodial renewal update. That we'll feel free upon the conclusion of this to try to answer any questions that you may have. So historically, our contract, we entered into a Sodexo custodial contract on June 3rd of 2020. And that is Sodexo operations. This was Sodexo, this program. Sodexo itself is a very large program, kind of service-oriented company and those type of things. So they have lots of different departments. And food service is definitely one of them. And then also with custodial is another. Some time ago, don't necessarily recall the exact year, we went to an outside source for our custodial services. And that company had that contract for several years. We rebid, as we will at the conclusion of our renewal periods. Once we're out of renewals here for our custodial contract, we'll go out for an RFP and for that in the future. Sodexo was awarded the contract. The agreement for that contract has a clause, it's just the one I previously mentioned, and it's renewed annually for 4 additional one-year periods upon the mutual consent of both parties. The original contract for this was in the amount of $2,051,725. On February 17th of last year, the Warren County School Board voted to renew the agreement for the 2021-2022 school year with a 1.5% increase, and a 1.5% increase off of that $2,051,000 is $30,776 for a total contracted price coming into this year of $2,082,501. Sodexo's operation currently provides a staff of 56 custodial professionals. The 56 is comprised of 1 on-site manager, 1 on-site custodial supervisor, and 54 custodians. Under Sodexo, staffing levels have been consistent throughout our contract. We have experienced reduced complaints from administrative staff regarding daily services. Sodexo is a global company that sets extremely high expectations and standards. Quality controls across all schools and facilities have been more consistent. They have been extremely responsive to our protocol demands for the pandemic. Their ability to locate and to procure the disinfectants needed for our mitigation plan during the pandemic has been amazing, especially when the lead times have increased for such products used. And to go back very similar to Sodexo with their ability to store multiple different type of things related to food, then Sodexo can also store at their warehouses a lot of these supplies so that when they go to order, they're really just ordering from themselves per se and those type of things. A lot of things that we have ordered through facilities and those type of things have just had a long lead time to get those in. But we're fortunate that with Sodexo's ability to store products and those type of things, we've been able to get our cleaning supplies much faster. The annual summer cleaning done by Sodexo has been more aligned with our needs. Summer cleaning, I know that Dr. Ballinger had mentioned to go check out transportation and those type of things to see what they do in the shop, and I would definitely concur. But also what is done inside of the school during the summertime in order to prepare it for the next year is also really amazing of what has to go on. And you're doing that while you're working around multiple activities. You could have summer school, you could have camps, different type of camps and those type of things that are going on. And Sodexo has really been really helpful, really good, an excellent partner in making sure that their summer cleaning schedule aligns with what we're doing inside the school. Sodexo supports our emergency situations and also our after-hour or after-school activities. We also we do have our athletic events and our co-curricular type events, but we also have facility usage. And our schools are pretty much going 7 days a week as far as with activities, parks and recs, different type groups that use our facilities. So in order to do that, we assign custodial coverage for that. We're reimbursed. For that by the user and so forth, but it's just an example when I say after-school activities. It's not just limited to the things that we do. It's also as a school division as far as athletics or co-curricular type things, but it's also our facilities also being used as community centers. Mr. Levesey, our Director of Facility, works closely with our Sodexo manager. His name is Mr. Michael DeCorte, on a daily basis to ensure all aspects of the contract is fulfilled. Mr. DeCorte, his office probably sits from here to here from Mr. Levesey, so they're able to coordinate, they're able to talk about how things are going. And since Mr. DeCorte is here as the manager of Sodexo for us, he's available for visits and inspections in the school. And overall, the Sodexo has been an outstanding partner with Warren County Public Schools. As I mentioned earlier, as inflation rates are 7% or so, we've been able to negotiate a renewal rate of 2.5 under the current inflation rates. And I feel good about that number. The low rates, along with the expectation and that we do not foresee any purchasing of any large capital expenditures for custodial for this upcoming year could be very helpful for us as well. And some of those capital expenditure type things is as the COVID and our response to COVID, we had lots of our little spray, they look like little Ghostbusters, for those who remember Ghostbusters. For the little Ghostbuster packs and those type of things, going around and spraying and disinfecting and those type of things. So we feel real strongly that we have enough of those type of items to get us through the year. A 2.5 increase for a $2,082,501 contract is $52,063. So this would create the 2022-23 renewal not to exceed $2,134,564. And that's in comparison, and I just sort of played around with this number, that's in comparison if we employed 56 employees and did benefits and salary and just say all of those things included $40,000 per person, that would put us at $2.24 million if that was just our people. So the recommendation at the next school board meeting on March 2nd will to be for renewal for the board to consider the custodial service contract with Sodexo be extended for the additional one-year period of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, which would be contingent upon the adoption of the 2022-23 budget. Now, the documents that would be in your packet for your next meeting would obviously be a lot of what I just covered here. It would show the current contract, and it would also show the current agreement for the upcoming year. That's what would be sent out in our next packet. What questions may you have for me or for Mr. Levacy that we could respond to?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Last item in our work session is the VSBA Code of Conduct for school board members. And this is just for discussion this evening. This is my third year on the board, and this looks similar or the same as the Code of Conduct we've had each of the other years. So basically, the Virginia School Boards Association, or VSBA, encourages its member boards to adopt the VSBA Code of Conduct for school board members. It has been the practice of the Warren County School Board to adopt the Code of Conduct on an annual basis. The Code of Conduct is being presented tonight for discussion and consideration by members. If desired, it can be placed on a future meeting agenda for adoption. Any discussion?
So I refused to sign this before. I will be refusing to sign it again. The VSBA is the lobbying group. They have no legal authority over us. And quite frankly, the last 3 weeks have reminded me why I was elected. I was not elected so that I can regurgitate VSBA answers. I don't speak like an administrator. I was elected by the people. And after what I saw here earlier tonight, I am not going to sit muzzled any longer. I am going to do the job that I was elected to do, to represent the parents and the people. And therefore, I will not sign this. I won't.
Any other discussion this evening on that? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Salins, can you read us into closed session?
As soon as I get it up.
She's
Yeah.
bringing it up.
Pulling it up. This motion is made that this open public meeting of the Warren County School Board become a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711. The school board desires to discuss the following matters in a closed meeting. Section 2.2-3711A1. Discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resigning of employees of the school board, specifically an employee personnel issue and the superintendent's mid-year evaluation.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Valentine, could you do roll call, please?
Yes. Dr. Funk?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Madam Chair?
Aye.
Mr. Rinaldi?
Aye.
Mrs. Salins?
Aye.
Thank you. I'm going to take a little break.